Fighting Talk back again, and today I'm delighted to be joined by UFC light heavyweight, middleweight,
Aye.
Paul Craig. Paul, obviously you just got back here, yeah. You had to support Chris Bungard tonight. Wasn't it big for you last weekend there against Brendan Allen? How's the face healing up?
The face is getting much better. Got a little bit of stem cell done in, injected into it just to try and speed up that recovery. Because this sport, you need to be constantly active. And being 35, 36 next week, in fact, a couple of days, I need to be active. So we need to get this healed up and we need to get back to the drawing board. As you said, Brendan Allen was not my night. I was surprised with quite a few things. Walking out into the Apex, the atmosphere wasn't great. See, when you're used to fighting in arenas, and I know we had the period of COVID where we were going into very small venues where there wasn't a lot of fans or there wasn't any fans. This was just a weird, and you could hear people talking. You could hear Guy Fieri talking about like how good a fucking smoked rub and a steak was. It was just, you could hear everybody individually speaking. I didn't like it, but I'm not saying that's the reason why I lost. I lost because I just felt flat. Didn't feel my normal self. Wasn't able to get any of my shots off. And then when it came to the jiu-jitsu exchanges, I wasn't able to wrap up where I would normally wrap up. It was very slidey, so I wasn't able to control them. And that's when I went for that knee bar, or the straight knee bar, like vaporizer, I think you call it. That's why I went for that, because I wasn't able to control his upper body. So I was like, right, I need to actually try and actively go for something else. But is there anything more Paul Craig than somebody's got a full rear naked choke latched in and Paul Craig's trying to go for a submission? I think that's like a quintessential Paul Craig answer to how do you defend the rear naked choke? You clearly go for the legs, attack the legs.
You're never in a boring fight, and again, that was certainly the case. What's then going to be the plan moving forward? Will it be a middleweight again, or are you thinking, because if you want to be active, I'm presuming that cut to 205 is a lot easier than it is to 185. So what is the plan with that?
So we had spoke to the UFC, spoke with management, and it's pretty much both of these kind of things. I'm not saying the title run for light heavyweight or middleweight's done, but it just now needs to be reevaluated, and it's like, right, what are we fighting for? Are we just fighting for the sake of fighting now because we're not getting any closer to that title shot? I do believe that I've still got something left to give in both of these divisions, but now it's just going to be about fighting. Like who's getting it next? That's what it's going to be about. So light heavyweights, I would have accepted that fight that just got announced like yesterday between Khalil Roundtree and Anthony Smith. I'd love to have stepped in there last minute, but I've been given a 42-day suspension. So as soon as that's over, we'll be active and we'll be kicking some ass.
I think since the last time we spoke as well, of course, you've moved gyms now. You're now at higher level under James Duan. For me, one of the best coaches in the UK, if not the best. Just what's that added and changed in your game?
I never showcased what I had practiced that whole camp in my last fight, but when you look at the London camp and how well I looked in my conditioning, as well as my striking, able to get these big heavy body kicks off, not only that, being more active on the ground as opposed to being a grappler looking for a submission. I was looking for these finishing shots, the elbows, the controlling of dropping heavy ground and pound. That's what I think's changed, and it's having someone like James Duan who can see these positions and being like, right, Paul, you're a very good grappler, but why don't you add the ground and pound element to your grappling exchanges to make it more effective? And that's what we've seen in that first fight in London as a middleweight. I'm going to capitalise on that, and I'm going to be a much better version of an MMA fighter than I have been. Striking's definitely improving. My ability to stand up, my feints are getting better, and it's all thanks to James Duan, and he knows that, and I've had this conversation with him, and I appreciate everything that he's done. But we're back to the drawing board, and we're going to get better.
To go back then just to something you sort of touched on at the start about the crowd not being there and it being a strange atmosphere. If it was an Apex fight, would you maybe want to hold off a couple of weeks for an arena full, or how would you look at that, I guess, assess that moving forward? If it was such a difference that maybe you weren't expecting, or now you fought there, is it something you'll be used to?
It's one of these things where it's the unknown, isn't it? Because I previously fought Shogun in the Apex, but that was with no fans. And it's slightly different to having no fans to having a couple of fans who are having you could hear them having conversations, and that kind of throws you off. You're getting ready for war, you're getting ready for battle, and there's people discussing where they're going after that. I didn't like that. So if it's a case of waiting a couple of weeks and getting an opportunity to fight in the arena, then I'm going to take that. But now it's no longer the unknown. I know what it's like to fight in Apex. there was all the added pressure of being the first Scottish fighter to headline a card. There was the added pressure of being the first fighter to ever wear face paint in the media day as well. So there were all these kind of things where the UFC were giving me too much love, and too much love for the Scottish is not a good thing. We like to be the underdogs. We like to work for what we're getting, and that's what as we move on, that's what we're going to have to do as fighters.
Them two bits, especially being the first Scottish fighter to ever headline the card, that's something nobody can take away from you now. So just how special is that for your name to be in them history books?
Yep. When I first started this sport, it was about being the first to do something. I wanted to be the first UFC fighter. I wasn't quite the first Scottish UFC fighter. We had was it Duan Calderwood first, and then it was Robert Whiteford, then Duan Calderwood, then Stevie Ray. So I was like the fourth, but the way I kind of justified that to myself was I was the first that was given a proper contract. I didn't have to get a last minute replacement fight, or I didn't have to go through the tough house. But these were actual firsts for Scotland. The first Scottish fighter to headline a main event. That for me is like dreams come true. The first UFC fighter to be in the computer game. That for me the same again, like first Scottish fighter to do that, first Scottish fighter to wear the face paint. All these kind of firsts make me so proud to be Scottish. And it's all about the next part of my chapter. What am I going to do now is being a 35-year-old fighter in the UFC, and it's going to be about racking up as many wins and being as much of the upset as I can be in the sport.
Away from your fighting, you're also a podcaster. I am, of course, the Leonard podcast. You, Ross Cooper, Chris Bungard. How much are you enjoying doing that?
Yeah, that's what makes this podcast so special. The fact that it's not scripted, the fact that we're not going in and being like, right, we need to speak about this, and this. It's an MMA podcast that doesn't really speak about MMA. We speak maybe about 2 or 3 seconds about MMA. Did you watch your fights at the weekend? Yeah, they were good, weren't they? Aye. What about that time? What about that time? I was in a altercation with a transvestite who robbed me. Like, these are the stories what you tune in for. The Leather podcast has been doing, I never expected to be this big, but it's getting bigger and bigger, and the more people who tune in and listen to it, the bigger it gets and the better it gets. And we're doing loads for the Patreon side of things as well. So we'll get the Patreon stuff, which is all these extra stuff where it's the Beardew breakdown, the Leather Boys breakdown, we go away and do adventures and all this kind of stuff. Podcast is like something I enjoy because it doesn't feel like it's work, but it's work for us.
Finally then, obviously after your suspension, how quickly are you want to get back in there, and how does 2024 look for Paul Craig?
If you ask my nutritionist and say, Lee, when do you want Paul to be out? He'd be like, well, I'm looking for maybe the summertime. But the nutritionist is there to do the job of nutrition. He's not there to fight. So I'm looking to be the start of the year, probably like March, April time. I think that's a good time of the year for me. Means I can hit the Christmas period with the family, put on a little bit of weight, and then after that, move into the new year with the new goals, and then work my ass off to get a fight and get a victory in middleweight or light heavyweight.
Perfect. Paul, thank you so much for your time. Nice to see you again. Great, thank you very much.